So my name is Mike. I am with Clear Admit, and Clear Admit, for a very basic introduction, is a business school applicant resource site for those of you who are interested in applying to different programs, MBA, MIM, other master's programs. Check out our platform. Lots of cool advice, tricks, and tips on how to get into the top programs. One of those top programs that we work with quite closely is the MBA program over at Vanderbilt University's Owen Graduate School of Management. And today, they've graced us with this awesome panel of alums who want to talk about some different outcomes from MBA programs, right? So there's kind of that typical outcome of you go to an MBA program. Obviously, everyone's looking to better themselves, whether it's academically or professionally into their careers. And everyone talks about the same kind of outcomes, right? Everyone goes consulting or tech or finance. Well, that's not the only way you can exit an MBA program. There's actually a lot of different ways you can better yourself in the program and then better your career in many different industries and different job functions and titles as you leave. And so I'm excited to hear from this panel today to talk about those different outcomes and all the different ways you can use an MBA to pivot or to extend a career or to get into something a little different. So with that, I want to pass it over to our moderator for the day. So if Maree, if you want to jump in here and introduce yourself, let's get things started.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us from all around the world. That's really exciting. So, my name is Maree Smith, and I'm a second year at Vanderbilt Owen, pursuing my MBA. So, it's crazy. I'll be graduating here in a few months in May. Actually, we do the mod system. So essentially like quarters, and we basically have one mod left. It's just flown by, but it's been a really great experience for me. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself, but really I want to focus on these three great panelists that we have here. They're the ones who kind of have all the experience. So then we'll do introduction with all of them, and then I'll be asking them several questions throughout this session. So we hope you gain a lot from this. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Minnesota. I went to undergrad at Butler University in Indiana. I was a student athlete. I was on the swim team, so that was a really big part of my college experience. And actually, after undergrad, I kind of took an untraditional route and I moved to Spain for 3 years, where I taught both actually Spanish and English. And truly, this was one of the best experiences I had. It brought my Spanish to a whole nother level. And it really made me realize that I want to work for a global company moving back to the United States. So when I came back to the US after 3 years, I did just that. I worked for 3M back in Minnesota, and I essentially worked on their LATAM team, integrating different sales and marketing campaigns from the global side of the business to the LATAM countries that we represented. So that role was fully in Spanish, and love that. Through an acquisition of the division I was working for, I moved to a different company called Neogen, and I was working kind of in a niche industry within Neogen. It was pet health genomics, so it's kind of funny. Never thought would work in pet health genomics, but really it was like a product marketing role, almost kind of like a brand management. And I had just decided that, I had seen where all my bosses were and kind of like VPs at those two companies that was at, and they all had either an MBA or maybe some sort of more technical graduate degree. And I decided that, this was something that I wanted to pursue both for the short term and long term ROI. So I looked at several different schools and just felt like Vanderbilt was the right fit for me for many, many different reasons. And at Owen Vanderbilt, I've been focusing on operations analytics as a concentration, as well as strategy. I'm involved in several different extracurricular activities. I host our podcast where we interview different Owen alums, which is a great experience for me. I'm also a peer coach, so I work with different first years on their recruiting process. And I work in admissions. I absolutely love it. I work with different prospective students with the different events we have. So if you ever come to Owen, I'll probably meet you. So that's just a little bit about me. Over the summer, I interned at Nissan. I was working in supply chain, and I'll be going back to Nissan in the rotational program. So I'm very, very excited about that opportunity. We'll be starting probably in about mid-June. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. Now I want to introduce our amazing panelists that we have. So we have Luke, who graduated from Owen in 2024, and he's at Nissan. He's a senior dealer operations manager. We also have Diep. She graduated from Owen in 2025 last year, and she's at Amazon working as a Pathways Operations Manager. And then last but not least, we have Shannon. She also graduated from Owen last year in 2025, and she's a senior LDRP, Leadership Development Rotational Program, I think, specialist at Medtronic. So thank you all for being here today. If you wouldn't mind, we'll start just kind of in the order of the slide. We'll start with Luke, just giving a quick introduction, kind of a bit about your background, why you chose to get your MBA, and then, of course, maybe a little more details of what you're doing now at Nissan.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And while you look at that photo of me with much longer hair, you don't have to worry that wasn't from stress from the job or anything. I just decided to try a new look. So don't worry about that. But it's been what coming on to a year and a half now with Nissan, but let's take it back a little bit. Before I came into my time in Owen, I served as a captain in the military. I was stationed overseas for a little over 3 years, serving in all different countries, stationed out of Germany, but I went to the North Pole, to Morocco, to all over Eastern Europe. And after working with all these different countries for various exercises and operations, I realized I kind of wanted to take my career to the next step. And I wanted an opportunity to kind of influence that global impact that I was doing with the military, but on the other side of the corporate America side. So as I was getting out, I kind of took a look at an opportunity to prepare myself. And I worked for a company called Instant Brands, think Corel, Corning, and Snapware. I was a financial analyst for them, learning business acumen, because as you can imagine, a field artillery officer in the Army does not know the first thing about accounting. So I got my introduction before I went into Accounting 101, which was a bit of a fast-paced environment for Mod 1, as I'm sure everybody on this call remembers from their time in Mod 1. But during my time in Owen, I served in various different aspects of student leadership and joined a bunch of different clubs. And my internship in between the years, I worked in a data analytics role for Anheuser-Busch in New York City, where I got an incredible opportunity to kind of work with the wholesale side of the business and understand from a data perspective how the supply chain for such a big corporation such as Anheuser-Busch impacts the distributors at the bottom level for decision making. And when I was working there, it kind of made me realize that I really wanted to focus more on the actual ground floor level for when it came to a business. And in the second year, I decided to re-recruit, and I found an opportunity through Owen to introduce myself to Nissan. And Nissan at the time was going through an incredible change in terms of their global perspective on how they were going to re-envision their model lineups. And I saw an incredible opportunity for myself as a soon-to-be fresh MBA graduate to hit the ground running and make an immediate impact. So I have been with Nissan since July of 2025. My first role was in long-term financial planning on the FP&A team, where we did an entire revision of the global budget. And from there, I'm now currently sitting in dealer operations, which I think of almost a district manager or territory manager. I run the state of Arkansas, Missouri, and half of Illinois for Nissan. And I do vehicle forecasting, finances, marketing. I'm kind of a jack of all trades for 15 dealerships across those states. And as you can imagine, I'm on the road quite a bit for that role, but it's been exciting for the last 8 months, and I couldn't imagine a better second rotation for this program.
Thanks, Luke. We'll go next with Diep.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diep. I'm originally from Vietnam, and I just graduated from Owen the last year in May. Prior to business school, I spent a little over 3 years in EY in Vietnam. So I started out in financial services audit, and I moved into advisory for my last year. The whole experience really built my foundation in finance and taught me how to approach complex problems in a structured way. Um, the whole like my experience with EY really involved in deep analysis, working closely with multiple stakeholders, presenting recommendations to leaders, which really pushed me both technically and from a communication standpoint. But at that point, I also realized that what I'm missing here is the leadership and the management skills that would help me move upward in my career pathway. And that's why I decided I wanted an MBA. And during my time at Owen, in my first year, I initially recruited for consulting. But like everyone probably know by now, like consulting is a very competitive space. And so when consulting recruiting was done, I decided that I need to cast a wider net, and I landed my internship with Amazon. I did my internship in a fulfillment center in San Antonio in 2024. Enjoyed the experience being in a fast-paced environment, pushing productivity, and I decided that I would come back for my full-time role with Amazon. Right now, I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, working as a pathway operation manager. I've been mostly in charge of managing a sort center, owning labor planning, driving productivity, and delivering a gain cost target. So the role mostly focused on influencing cross-functional partners, executing with consistency on a day-to-day basis. That's all about me.
Thanks, Diep. And then last but not least, Shannon.
Everyone, I am Shannon Redfield. I'm originally from Kentucky, and that's where I moved back to after business school. Prior to business school, I have odd background. I was the president of a chamber of commerce, so nonprofit background, and then I was an operations manager for my family's restaurant in Kentucky. And both of those were really small organizations, and I knew that I wanted to kind of have an area where I have more chance for growth and development. So I wanted to get into a larger corporation and kind of round out knowledge gaps, which brought me to applying to MBA programs, fell in love with Vanderbilt, and ended up there. Through that time, I joined several clubs, organizations, came in wanting to do consulting, and started just attending various info sessions to get a broader perspective of what was going on, and really fell in love with the idea of an LDRP as a way to gain more exposure to different functions, and ended up interning at Medtronic in downstream marketing in their lung health, and then got a return offer, went back full time. I've been there since July, and I'm working in their cardiac ablation solutions in business development and innovation. In that role, really focused on, I just wrapped up a limited market release of a new product launch that's moving into a global launch. So just like Luke and Diep mentioned, that global focus of the job is a really nice aspect to have as well. Watching that roll out over the US, improve the product, hear from physicians and people from the field of how that product's working, how we can improve it, and then scaling that up for global launch. So that is pretty much what I work on day to day with other projects mixed in. We're headquartered in Minneapolis, so I do go up there, but I am remote out of Kentucky right now.
Awesome. I appreciate the introduction. You guys all have very different backgrounds and very exciting careers. So we'll just kind of jump right into the questions. And for all of the people who are chiming in, if you have a question, feel free to either put it in the question box or the chat, and we'll make sure that we leave the last 10 minutes or so for questions at the end. So we'll just start, and kind of whoever has an answer for this, just go ahead. But you guys talked a little bit about this in your intro, but maybe you have kind of something else to add. So what inspired you to pursue your career path rather than a more typical MBA career path, such as consulting, finance, investment banking? You talked about this a bit, but did you know what you wanted to do coming into B school right away? Did you have to pivot? How did that all work out for you?
Yeah, I can go ahead and lead this off. So I'll work backwards to this question, because when you take a look at your journey through business school, getting ready to attend and going through the interview process, wherever you're at in life, most of the time, a lot of individuals aren't really too sure about where they want to be. And for me, I was sitting in Morocco applying for the MBA and sitting in the back of my tank. And when the application asked, where do you see yourself after business school? I didn't have an answer. And I think for the people on this call who are worried about that question, about where they want to be, if they're looking at an MBA as a fresh start, don't be scared. That's what the MBA is for. It's one of the best tools to pivot in corporate America and just globally as well. It's a tool that gives you that opportunity to make that step into a new industry, function, you name it. So for me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I came in, green as grass, just ready to kind of say yes to everything. Much like some of the other individuals on this call, I attended the consulting club. I went to finance info sessions. I said yes to everything. And as I started going through recruiting, I started narrowing myself down to what do I want in my life? And the answer for that was I wanted a work-life balance, but I also wanted to be successful later in life. And as I started to kind of narrow down, I got introduced to leadership development programs. And I think that was a perfect opportunity for someone like me who wanted to kind of figure it out as I went. And when I joined a company and kind of learning about where I actually belonged, because for me, I didn't have any experience in corporate America prior to. I was in the military. I wore the same outfit every day. And, I was kind of just one of a million over there. So for me, having an opportunity to kind of identify myself as my own individual through a leadership development program is what I really strive to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Luke said. I went in like, I guess, consulting because I can get exposure to other industries and then kind of figure it out after I put in 2 years there. But similar to him, say yes, go to other events where you're not initially interested in. I just started signing up for info sessions and ended up finding really cool companies with really cool opportunities. The LDRP allows you to have exposure to finance, to marketing, to business development, to strategy. It really allows you to round out that skill set, similar to how consulting would, but with what I would say a better work-life balance. And from my experience as well, people really are invested in that leadership development part of it. One-on-ones with people within the company have been fantastic. VPs and up at Medtronic. So yeah, came in consulting, and the more info sessions I attended, quickly pivoted to the LDRP side and couldn't be happier.
Totally agree with what both Luke and Shannon has said. For me, I did recruit heavily for consulting because I came in knowing that consulting probably has the majority of companies sponsoring for international students. So that was my strategy. I know that I had to find a company that will sponsor me. So I did recruit heavily for consulting, knowing that the timeline for different industry is different. So consulting and IB go first, and then other industry go later. So that's what I did. So I focused heavily in consulting. I did all the case prep, all the interview with like the consulting folks, which I did not regret at all because that really helped me in preparing for my interviews later with other industry. Because at the end of the day, what they are looking for is your transferable skills, that your leadership skills in walking out of MBA school, walking out of MBA program. So I did not regret that at all, and that really helped me in preparing for all my interviews later on when the consulting recruitment was done. And now, when I started going to the info sessions or the interviews for like operation role, like that just means I already had my stories prepared. I did kind of practice all my behavior interview. Now I just have to do a little quiz for each company, and that really helped me out a lot.
And I think you said it earlier, Ziap, in your intro. Like just from my experience too, it's so important to cast that wide net. If you're like, I'm only going to recruit for X, and if that might not work out, then you're like, oh no, what's my plan B? So I think it's just so important to just be open-minded because, at least in my experience, there were times where, we have tons of different companies that come like during the lunch hour and have info sessions. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm interested in them, but maybe just attend the lunch session, be open-minded and see. And honestly, what I found is that sometimes those info sessions really surprised me. Maybe it was a company I hadn't even heard of. I'm like, hey, I'm really interested in this. This role seems really exciting. And so that would be like my big piece of advice is just that wide net, like you said before, Ziep, and just be open-minded from the beginning. Like you said, maybe if you're kind of in finance or investment banking, you do need to recruit a little bit earlier right away. But for a lot of them, like you can recruit several different paths at once and it can work out. I know, Luke, you mentioned you were in consulting club, and I know there's several different resources that kind of help with recruiting. So what I want to ask is, were there any other resources or clubs that were impactful during your time at Owen that really helped you prepare for your recruiting process?
Yeah, I'll quickly touch on the consulting club because I didn't really expand upon that when I mentioned that. But when you look at the application process and interview process for a lot of MBA roles now, the case-based format interview is much more prevalent and it's becoming almost widespread across every industry and function that you're going to be applying for. The consulting club is a one-stop shop to help you prepare on how to interview for that. So while I didn't end up in consulting, that was one of the most valuable clubs for me in terms of how to better prepare myself for interviews because of just how important that case-based format is. To build upon that, for my personal background, the ONR Forces Club was a sense of community for me getting out of the military because a lot of veterans, I don't know if there's any other veterans on this call, but there's almost a what's next in your mind when you kind of like the Army gives you your papers and they kind of kick you to the curb and they say, hey, thanks, figure it out. So having a community and outside of just the Owen Armed Forces Club, there's multiple different community clubs for international students as well to find a home within the business school. I would fully and wholeheartedly recommend you taking the time to attend those events in those clubs because business school, while yes, everyone's top of mind is to find a job, it's also to build a network and to build long-lasting friendships there. I have multiple individuals who I've gone to weddings for that I have made friends with in this business school. I know many of them are going to be in my future wedding one day. And I'm currently sitting in Nashville visiting some of them right now just because of just how strong the friendships there are. But on top of that, you have a world-class career management center and an LDP team that you can take advantage of as well in your time here that will help you succeed down the road, just outside of clubs as well.
Thanks, Luke. For the other two, any other clubs or activities that helped you with your recruiting process?
I think I totally agree with Luke, and that's also what I did too. Like I really fully utilized my time with the consulting club to help me prepare for all my interviews. So similar to Luke, I'd say that one of the resources that I utilize a lot is my peers in my second years. So for all of my interviews preparation, like I practice heavily with all those folks who are like, for example, Amazon, like I practice with every single one of my peers who were also interviewing for Amazon because those are the people who know the best what we should be preparing for, what we should be looking for in the answer, and we helped out each other. So it's really a competitive but not cutthroat environment where you want everyone to succeed together. So that is one thing that I would recommend anyone to utilize heavily, like utilize your peers and your second years, like the people surrounding you.
Again, agree with everything both of them said. I took a similar approach, but to elaborate, the Career Management Center, the CMC, was huge for me. You can set up appointments, that's free to you. They worked with me on my resume, on interview prep, on double checking my cover letter. So that was just a nice peace of mind to have a second set of eyes on those things and help me strategize. And then the networking nights hosted by our healthcare association, marketing, whichever you're interested in, consulting. The networking nights were huge, a way to meet people from a lot of different companies, connect with alums. And those are some relationships that helped me ultimately get to Medtronic.
And then I wanted to touch, I know Luke mentioned the LDP, and just for all of the listeners, LDP stands for Leadership Development Program, and it's just a great resource that we have here at Owen. Essentially, I think people have all different types of motivations for why they want to get their MBA. A lot of times it's more of that kind of those hard skills, those quantitative skills, like the financial acumen or whatever that may be. But those soft skills often get overlooked, but are equally as important. If your goal at the end of your MBA is to, be a people leader, You know, you have to like really kind of know what your strengths and weaknesses are and dive into those, have kind of that self-awareness, and really the leadership development program works with you on all of that. And so I worked with them actually even during my recruiting process when I was lucky enough to have a few offers that I was able to decide between for my internship. And we kind of like, relayed them back to like, what are my values? What are my true values? And how does that relate to all these different offers where I can make my final decision? So just, a lot of different resources out there. Um, one thing I wanted to ask is, there's kind of a lot of considerations when you think about your internship and your full-time role. So what was most important for all of you when pursuing your career path? Was it, the industry? Was it the function that you'd be working with, the company, the geography where you'd be located? You can't always have all of them, but maybe you can kind of pick and choose what are most important to you. So how did you balance those when making your decision?
I would say for me, the most important part was not the function, industry, or even company. It was personal fit that I felt when I was going through the actual interview process. When you're going through the interview process in business school, you're going to be interviewing with dozens of companies. I mean, you're going to be just talking to almost hundreds of people. It's going to get dizzying by the end of the recruiting process. And I think the biggest takeaway that is important at top of mind is you're going to get, like Maree said, you're going to get that opportunity to have multiple to choose from. And you got to be able to reflect back on who you really felt a good fit with, because who knows, this might be the next 20 to 30 years of your life. And you want to make sure that you're working for a company that you really feel at home with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time there as an MBA graduate. You're going to be immediately thrust into an executive position where there's going to be a lot of expectations out of you. So if you go through that interview process and you do your research for these companies and you find yourself in a really good cultural fit, personal fit, individual fit with the interviewers and all the individuals you talk to, I think you got to sometimes trust your heart in terms of what that means for where you see yourself in your career, because that 9 to 5 can sometimes stretch and it feels like 12 to 12 some days. Like it's a day. But for me, looking at the two different companies that I worked for, Anheuser-Busch and Nissan, Anheuser-Busch was an immediate cultural fit because I joined during a pretty tumultuous time in the company. And despite all that, everybody had a really good attitude about themselves, about how they were going to dig themselves out of a turbulent time in the company's career. And that made all the difference for me as an intern, looking at them and seeing the entire team just, digging their heels into the dirt and getting ready to continuing to fight to build the company back. And the same thing for Nissan. When I was going through that interview process, there was a lot on the horizon for Nissan. They were struggling with a volume model mix challenge where they didn't really have a whole lot of products coming out in the next few years. And there was a lot of different areas for the company that they needed to reevaluate their current strategies. And I saw an opportunity, but at the same time, when I was interviewing with the team, I interviewed with in the final round interview, my first mentor in the leadership development program, Craig Keys, was my final round interviewer. He's now my direct boss. He asked me to come join him in the central region of Nissan. So I've been following him, and it sounds like he's pushing me to stay in the central region for my next rotation. And it means a lot to have that leadership team that has your back. And if you can figure that out in the interview process, that means so much.
I'd agree with the personal fit or the vibes, if you will. Meeting with several Medtronic people through coffee chats and them connecting me with more alum. Everything just clicked. Everybody had a different personality, but they all were equally as excited to like get up and go to work in the morning, which I love to see. And they were really excited to invest in, the next generation of Owen people coming into the company. Maree mentioned earlier, am I back? Okay. The value side of things, I was lucky enough to have a couple offers to evaluate, and it was where do my personal values align? So that was really the core, were my personal values. And I loved the patient first mindset for Medtronic. Like we first and foremost are focused on improving patient lives and making their day-to-day life better, extending their life and alleviating pain. And that really resonated with me. It's something that I feel really excited to get to be a part of every day. So the personal values, cultural fit.
For me, wait, am I back also?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So for me, I think I took a different perspective because for me, I'm an international student. So what I look for would be a company that sponsor. I think that is like my top criteria because if they don't sponsor, then that's it. So I mostly focus on companies that sponsor. And then after that, also the like the growth opportunities, your career, how defined is your career path within the within the company. So that would be my top criteria. And also at some point, I was also thinking that like it's really on you whether you want to stay with your first company right out of MBA. You still have the opportunity to switch company. It's not that company that you're gonna stick with for your whole life. It's really your choice with what you want to do. So the first company can be important for you to build up your resume, but you also have other opportunities as you work through your time. So that's basically what I thought about when I was deciding on where I want to go.
Definitely. So let's move on to talk more about kind of the academics when it comes to business school, which is obviously a very big part of the business school experience. So how did Owen's curriculum set you up for success in your current roles? Were there any really influential classes that you took? And maybe just to give everyone a little bit of a background, and I know this is consistent with other business schools as well, but at Owen, you kind of have the concentrations that you can choose from. So just some popular concentrations, we have healthcare is a really big one, just being in Nashville, healthcare is a huge industry. We have operations and analytics, finance, marketing, strategy, others as well, but those are kind of the big ones. So, you can kind of take classes that are in that bucket, or you can just take classes that you're interested in and get kind of a general management concentration as well. So, if any three of you could kind of just touch on the curriculum, and really how that set you up for success, any of the, concepts from the classes that you actually use in your day-to-day role.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something that Maree mentioned earlier in this call about soft skills. In your first mod, you're going to be having a very soft skill oriented class under a professor called Kimberly Pace, where you're going to be talking with pretty much you're going to be learning how to be doing public speaking with a lot of your fellow classmates. And for a lot of new students, it's a very stressful class because a lot of individuals just aren't that familiar with routinely doing meetings like this or standing up in front of individuals. And I think it's incredibly important for the corporate America side because there's going to be a very high expectation for you to be doing that in not only your internship, but in your immediate role right after business school. So I think for that, while I was an officer in the Army and I spoke to a lot of individuals in person and briefed a lot of individuals, I think it was more of it came from a higher down level where this class taught me how to be almost peer to peer, which I didn't really have a lot of that exposure in the military. And it was a very important role for me. And I loved it so much that I ended up being a TA in the second year for that class because I wanted to kind of share my experiences and findings, and I wanted to help foster that level of understanding because if you can do well in that class, it's going to mean a world of difference when you go into interviews because all of these individuals that are interviewing you are looking for who you truly are as a person. You're going to be able to speak to all the different corporate and professional accomplishments that you have already made in your career, of course, but when you start getting into, the personal answers, they don't want to see a robot. They don't want to see a pre-rehearsed answer. And this class is going to teach you how to kind of bring out that personal side of you and show and make sure that you shine in that interview process so that you can keep moving through those interview processes, and then you can land that interview, and then you can go relax in closing bell on Thursday nights and not stress about having to go to info sessions on Friday mornings. On top of that, there are a lot of different classes, like Maree said, about it's a choose your own adventure in a business school. For me, I focused on strategy and finance, which, funny enough, consulting and finance, we're not supposed to be talking about that here because technically different paths. But when you kind of take a look at it, it's two different areas that kind of help build very foundational pillars for business acumen to help you understand, especially if you're pivoting from a different career, such as marketing, or if you like Sam Uterly, if you're an actor coming into business school, or for myself, if you were, in the military, different ways to kind of help bring you up to speed with a lot of different areas that your classmates are already familiar with, so that you can make sure that you are right in the middle of the pack and you can stay ahead of the game.
Shannon or Diep, any other classes that you felt like helped you, with your recruiting process, internship, full-time role at Owen?
I definitely say that I really enjoy classes by Professor Brian McCann, and then Ranga. I really, they talk about how you should view yourself as an individual, as a leader, as a manager, uh, and also how you play your role within an organization. Where you should managing up, managing down, and managing your peers. So I definitely value those classes a lot, because that gives you the perspective about, like, right now when you just graduated, you came into a new organization, what you should be thinking about, like if you want to spend your career with this organization, who are the stakeholders that you should start thinking about and start networking with, having conversations with. So that really helped me a lot in my internship, knowing that if I walk into this business, I have 12 weeks of internship, like who are the important stakeholders that I need to get a hold of and need to communicate whatever I'm doing, similar to my full-time role.
I agree with Diep. Those were two of my favorite professors during my whole time at Vanderbilt. And then to add another, Sina, newer professor, I took predictive analytics with him, as well as I took every course that he taught, just because I really enjoyed him and his teaching style that much. But he kind of dug into AI and how you can use that. He actually took 10 minutes at the end of every class to show how you can use that in your job, like the second that you start. So I really valued that hands-on experience and him translating into, this is what you're learning in the classroom. This is how you can use it in your internship or your full-time role. And then additionally, I did a lot of data analytics courses, because ultimately I wanted to end up in marketing. And I didn't love those courses. They weren't fun for me initially, but those were skills that I used literally the second week of my internship and then the second week of my full-time job. And it just allows you to provide meaningful insights to your team without them having to kind of walk you through how to do that.
Definitely. And I think what's great is that you are required to take these core classes when you're at Owen. So like your first mod, that first 7 weeks, you actually don't get to choose any classes you take. They're all required. And then you get to choose more electives as each mod goes on. And so remember for me, it was mod 2 where we were required to take a core operations class with a great professor named Nguyen. And I had worked pretty closely with the operations team on my previous role, but hadn't worked directly in operations. That really kind of opened my eyes to like, hey, I'm really interested in like this operations thing and kind of want to pursue it. And end up now like I said, I'm pursuing it as a concentration as well. And actually, Shannon will be taking predictive analytics next mod with SEMA, so I'm very much looking forward to that. So I think it's great, like just kind of from a curriculum structure that you're taking all these classes that you might not actually be interested in, but if, like I said, if you come in open-minded, you might be like, hey, I might be interested in marketing. I never thought so, or healthcare, or whatever that looks like. Um, Great. So I see that we have a lot of questions about networking and kind of the alumni network. So I want to make sure that we touch on that, and we'll definitely answer some of your questions around networking as well. But how did you leverage the alumni network at Owen during and after business school?
Yeah, and I'll go back to talking about the LDP team. here. So when I was going through re-recruiting after I left Anheuser-Busch, I was still in the mindset of staying within the alc bev industry just because of how much I enjoyed my experience, my internship. And I remember going into the LDP office and sitting down with Melinda Allen and just asking her, hey, do you have any contacts that I can just at least reach out to kind of see who I can, just get the ball started around here? Within 2 minutes, she had Carlos Diaz and Lowell Goldman. Carlos Diaz is the entire group vice president of Bacardi, and Lowell Goldman is the owner of Lippman Brothers, one of the largest distributors around the Nashville area. And he is very tied into every single alc bev industry. So within an hour of sitting down with that team, I had conversations already to start networking with some very high level executives at some of these companies, which then both of them are Owen alumni. And from there, it just started a chain reaction of different networking opportunities. And then that got me an interview with EJ Gallo and a few other alc bev companies. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that there is an expansive network for Owen, not only across the Nashville area, but across the nation. And you have a team here that is ready to jump for you, ready to help you out, to help you find areas. If you start to, kind of stutter in your networking opportunities or looking for outreach, they're right there to help you. For me, I have been an individual who has been almost relentless with networking since the beginning of business school. It was almost a part-time job for me with the amount of coffee chats that I was setting up for myself because, like I touched on earlier, I said yes to everything. And the amount of info sessions I attended turned into multiple coffee chats. And then those multiple coffee chats turned into multiple coffee chats. And it was just a web. But then you're building this web as a business school student to further your experience later on, so that when you do enter the workforce and you keep in touch with these individuals, you have opportunities to help enhance your career further down the road. And for me, when it comes to Nissan, that's been a New Year's resolution for me because I moved away from the HQ office and I've been very immersed in the field. I've gotten back into the networking mindset over the last few months, and I've started to think about, because of the rotational mindset, I've got that next rotation coming up at the end of this year, 8 months away. I got to start making my connections now. I got to start building footprints in all the different teams that I see myself in moving forward. And on top of that, with opportunities to go overseas for the next role, I've started reaching out to the Japan team and the Switzerland office to make sure that they know my name. And I compile monthly achievements, and I almost make little newsletters for all the different team members that I've reached out to. And I've kind of just keep them in touch with everything that I've been accomplishing in the field. And because of that, I've maintained some pretty consistent connections for where I see myself moving into these next roles. And I think networking is, it's almost you can be taught it, but it's almost intrinsic in terms of how if you understand the importance of networking and it comes naturally to you, there's nothing that networking can't do for you.
I use the CMC to help connect me with people. I said, this is what I'm interested in. Do any, second years or alum come to mind? And like Luke mentioned, it's a web. You meet with one person and they say, oh, I think your interest aligned with this person. And then by the end, you've talked to 20 Vanderbilt alums. With that, in the recruiting process, I spoke with someone who had graduated 1 year ago and someone who had graduated 18 years ago, all the way from, beginning level all the way to VP level. And I was so impressed because they all made time for me. So it's just a really strong alumni connection. They're more than happy to help. And then internally within my company, I had to question my second week of work on how to approach a project. And I had 2 alums that day that made time, like within the hour, to meet with me and discuss that project. So starting off, getting your foot in the door with companies, they're great. And then their investment in you continues as you continue to grow. And similar with mapping out that second rotation, I met with one of our alums and she said, I'll connect you with our president of the unit, no problem. You can have a meeting with them next week. So they really care about getting you to the right company, but also making sure that you are growing while you're there.
Similar to Luke and what Luke and Shannon said, I did really utilize my alumni connection here in Atlanta. Like any invitation I send out, like my success rate is like almost 95%. So I really appreciate that. Uh, and also CMC is a resource that still utilize to date. Like I'm still in touch with Courtney, one of our CMC, one of our best CMC person. So like which alum that I think that I can be like that 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 I would like to have a conversation with, that we may share something, I reach out to Courtney, and if she has that contact, she would share over to me. So that's definitely a great resource that you can utilize from our.
Definitely, all great way. You guys are great networkers, for sure. And just to give a little more background on kind of how you build those connections, to be able to network. Of course, we have many different people that you can just reach out to, and they have so many different contacts. But we also have like an internal recruiting platform. It's called 1220, and you all get access to it as Owen students. And for me, that's what I really utilize as well, when I kind of started the networking process. And so, like Nissan was a company that I was very interested in early on. And in that recruiting platform, I would type in, Nissan or whatever company I was interested in. And it actually had a list of all of the people who work at Nissan who were either Owen alums or even Vanderbilt alums as well. And so I know like Luke was on there, several other individuals. And a lot of times they even had like, their LinkedIn, of course, and their email address. And so it's just, we really do like networking is a huge part of it. So I reached out to several individuals on that list, and including a list from other companies before even deciding whether I was going to apply to that company and for that role, just to kind of see, is this a company that I'd be interested in or not? And I think that was really advantageous to my, recruiting process. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we leave time for questions. Mike, do you want me to ask some of the questions in the chat, or is that something you want to lead?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, let's see here. I gotta find them.
I can help if you want. I can get things kicked off if you'd like.
Yeah, I have one right here. And then, so one question we have in the chat, I'm curious about this. Do international students mostly only find opportunities in finance, tech, and consulting? And are these roles mainly finance or engineering focused, or are there other paths as well?
I definitely say that there like consulting, IB, definitely do have like more open roles for international student, but that doesn't mean that that's your only choice. Uh, like me, I did pathway that's operations. I know my friends, some of my friends did tech. One of my best friend in business school, she's doing finance for healthcare. So I'd say that there are different opportunities out there, but as international student, like you just have to work extra hard, like a little bit harder, just because you are new to the country, you are new to the community. So you just have to learn the environment. I'm not saying that you have to change yourself, but it's just naturally that you need to learn how things work and then find the companies that are willing to sponsor. So short of the long, like find a company that sponsor, or utilize your alumni network, utilize your resources to find that one position that may sponsor. They may not say it on their website, but once you talk to them, they may be open to that idea. So that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question we have, I'm kind of going through because we've answered some of these as we've been speaking. So I'm kind of just going through the ones that we haven't answered yet, if that works. But another question we have is, how flexible would you say the program is on changing your mind / figuring out what you want to do in the future?
I probably changed my mind 10 different times throughout the time of business school. I think when it came to actually academic focus, I think I flip-flopped between finance and operations quite a bit going into my second year. You have that whole first year to kind of build out your schedule after that first mod to make sure that you have hit all the core requirements, so that after your internship, when you go into year two, you can kind of decide how you want to slice and dice the rest of your degree from there. So a lot of flexibility in terms of your concentrations. And then for actual career focus, I mean, the sky is the limit. You can decide January of year two that you're not satisfied with the marketing roles that you've been chasing. And you say, hey, you know what? Like, I want something more well-rounded. And for me, I was chasing every single opportunity going into year two. And I think the CMC was losing their minds trying to keep up with all the different opportunities that I was chasing and where I was in the country for interviews. And the sky is the limit for you when it comes to, you get to make your own experience when it comes to these 2 years at this program.
Definitely. Next question we have is, how does recruiting for strategy and operations roles work? I'm asking because Diep mentioned she explored ops roles after consulting. Can you walk me through how that recruiting process for non-consulting slash finance roles typically goes? And that's good because we kind of talked about the timeline, right? How investment banking and consulting, are kind of ahead from a timeline perspective. But does anyone kind of just want to walk through like what that timeline looks like for these strategy, LDP, operations roles, what that looks like?
So I so my experience is that IB and consulting started really early, right when you just joined business school. So we operate on a mod system. So mod one, mod two is heavily IB and consulting focused. And then when it comes to the spring term, which is mod three and mod four, that's when other industries start to like have opening. So that's what I experience with my recruiting process. And look at Shannon, you guys can add on to that.
I think you nailed it. That was similar to my experience as well.
I
Awesome.
agree.
Perfect. And then one other question is, aside from consulting and IB positions, which industries do you feel were most welcoming to international candidates?
Uh, well, I think that there's not really a specific industry that is more welcome than others. It's really also based. I know we talk about how MBA is an opportunity for you to pivot into like different career choice. So it's really based on like the knowledge that you have of the industry. You have to do your lesson, you have to do your studies, and then based on the transferable skills that you have. So. Uh, I'd say it's a wide net that you have to cast.
Awesome. And another one here, another international one. Can you shed some light on how successful, let's see, uh, well, this is someone who has a little bit more experience, maybe 9 to 10 years. Maybe you guys could just, and maybe not specifically international, just kind of the amount of work experience you had maybe before your MBA and kind of what is typical for classmates on how many years of experience they had before getting their MBA.
I think I can chime on this for a little bit. From my understanding, or like for my class, I think the average work experience is about 3 to 5 years. There are definitely outliers, like you can have like 1, 2 years of experience, or you just graduate from college, or you just had like 10 years of experience. But I would say that the median or like on average, that would be around 3 to 5 years of experience. And Shannon, and look, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. One thing I'll say about 9 to 10 years of experience is, as the MBA route is becoming more popular and more prevalent and the market's being more saturated, I think more experience coming into a program when it comes to recruiting is never a bad thing. You've got more opportunity to differentiate yourself and you have more roles to show off why you deserve that job over somebody else.
Awesome. Well, I guess we have just about a few minutes left. The last thing I might want to ask some of you is, you had some really, really great advice that you gave all of us. I'm sure everyone has a lot of different takeaways. But if you could go back in time, maybe 2 or 3 years, and this is like the very beginning of your process of thinking, hey, I want to get my MBA, I want to go to B school. Is there one piece of advice that you would give someone who is just starting out in this process?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell myself and I would tell my buddies who, when we all joined together, that the stress at the beginning of this MBA school process is designed on purpose. It's meant to challenge you, and it's meant to see how well you are, how well you can lead, especially when you're put into opportunities to lead your peers in classes. There's going to be a lot of pushback from individuals, and it's a part of the journey. And on top of that, recognizing the impending fatigue from networking and recruiting, it's going to come, and it's going to feel hopeless at times, because I remember nights where I was shotgun blasting out dozens of LinkedIn applications just to try to see if something landed. It's all a part of the process, and I think that kind of touching on that, that's where the networking opportunities really kind of start to shine for you, is leveraging those networking webs, and all the different people that you meet will help you get through the stress and fatigue that is the recruiting grind. So I would tell individuals getting ready to come to business school is, don't worry, everybody across the country and every business school is feeling the exact same way. You are not alone.
I would say be ready to take risks sooner. I think I was a little too reserved coming into business school and really that first month. And I gained nothing from being reserved. So take risks, take classes you don't think you'd be good at, reach out to people who you think there's no way in the world they're going to reach back out to me. Just shoot those shots and it's going to work out great.
I definitely agree to both what Shannon and Luca just said. I just add on to say that let's start early. It's always good to come prepared. So we start working on things that you can start early, like all the admin stuff in terms of resume, cover letters, like get that out of the door, and then you can start focusing on like the stuff that you can only do when you come on campus.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Luke, Shannon, and Diep. It was a great conversation. I'm sure the listeners have so many different takeaways. So really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk to us and just tell us all about your MBA experience.
Always happy, Maree, and I'll be waiting for an invite to that podcast of yours, because I still haven't received that one.
Oh yes, you'll be next on my list. Same with Shannon and Diep as well.
Sign us up.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. And thank you, Maree, for moderating the panel. I mean, this was really awesome. A lot of great insights. And Gabrielle, I saw you in the background with a lot of awesome links, which was very helpful, I think. Answered a couple of questions by sharing the class profile and some of the other items. So I'll leave the session open a little bit for those attendees. If you want to go back and search for those links, save them down. You can go read those items later. But again, thank you all for putting this together. This was fantastic. And this video will be out. You'll be able to watch this and hear me talk about being able to watch this when you go get this link, probably tomorrow at some point. So we'll email this out to everybody who registered, and hopefully you can get a lot more sessions and insight from students like the ones you talked to today. So good stuff, everyone, all around. Thank you.